So if you're looking to create a calculated column to move forward with your data analysis, this is the video for you. We're going to walk through how to add one, when to use one, and when it's better to use the calculated column's cousin, the measure. And if data is your thing, whether it's the tools or analytics in some other way, please subscribe. So when you're talking calculated columns, there's two keys I want you to keep in mind here. Number one is that you are literally storing values in a column. So if you've watched the measures video, I'll put that in the card up here, but measures are summary aggregations of a value. And so that value can be something like a calculated column where each row will receive a value from the formula that you create. And the second thing is that Power BI is literally saving those values into a column. So it becomes part of your data model that you're interacting with, and each of those values are stored. So why do those keys matter? Number one, the information is saved in a way so that it makes the end user experience way faster than it would if you had them in a measure. It's using the RAM versus the processing power of an end user. And since the values are stored, you can use them way more dynamically in the slicers and visualizations and the axes and things like that on the report that you're creating. An example of using a calculated column would be like if you wanted to assign a high, medium, or low designation to your table. But I'm assuming you're watching this because you're trying to create your own calculated column, and I'm really curious what you're trying to accomplish. So if you don't mind, toss a comment below to tell me exactly what you're trying to do for real-world examples for other people like you trying to learn this tool. So when do you need to use a calculated column? Number one, if you are trying to create every row getting a unique value. And so like that high, medium, low example is one instance there. Number two, if you want to use the value as like a slicer or something, an axis in a graph. And number three, and my favorite, is if a measure is taking too long. If it's more than 3 seconds to interact with a report because of a measure I've got on the report, I would prefer to take that over to a calculated column instead. If I can't just include it in the data model itself. That's always number one. Number two, we're going to go with calculated column. Number three, measure for the end user. So let's dive into an example on just using a calculated column for a report. So what we're looking at here is just a simple dashboard. I kind of started in the measures video. So we have just created measure and auto measure in that conversation, but it's just a grid with the number of deaths by country. This is COVID cases data set. And the top 10 countries' highest cases, just pretty simple. It's not formatted in a way I'd be sharing with an end user necessarily, but it's a framework, right? What if I want to look at how things are playing out by, I don't know, day of the month? So I like to go up here and I'm going to say you also have new measure. And remember, there's multiple ways to do things in Power BI. So I'm going to hit new column under this modeling ribbon. And what happens is a little bar appears at the top, and it just doesn't jump out at me normally, but this is the start of creating your formula using DAX. The left side of the equal sign would be the title of it, and then you would put your formula. And I don't want you to get hung up necessarily what we're doing, but something field I'm going to call day category, using a switch function, and for every day that's below the 10th, equal to or less than the 10th of the month, we're going to call it early, and then mid, and a late. And we're just using this as an example with a very simple data set. So don't get hung up on the DAX, but we just want to see how it does it. And so what it's doing is it's literally going to calculate this for every record in the data set. And so now it has created something over here in the fields. We're going to put this day category, and you'll notice that it's got the FX here. That means that there's a formula involved and that it's actually a created calculated column versus like if you see this death in cases, that's actually a measure. So this indicates the calculated column. So I'm going to highlight the chart here just so that we can play around a little bit. And then I'm going to throw the day category into the legend. And so then we can kind of see early, mid, late. I don't really see a visible trend on this, but you can look at it in different ways and see if anything else jumps out at you. If you get confused about when you should be using a calculated column versus a measure, I'm going to link in the description below for the blog post with a little cheat sheet you can bookmark for whenever you're in this instance, and it runs through the differences as well as performance issues in both. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And check out this video that I have on the differences between them. I feel like that's really key, the difference between the calculated column and the measure.